We have breaking news. Conservative activist Charlie Kirk has been killed after being shot in the neck during an outdoor rally on the campus of Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. We have the latest confirmed information in this special breaking edition.
The rally at Utah Valley University was supposed to be one of Charlie Kirk's many stops across campuses in America. Just another evening where he would walk into a room full of tension.
Breaking details are still coming in on this story, but President Donald Trump just said that Charlie Kirk, the conservative activist, is dead after he was shot at an event today outside Salt Lake City in Orem, Utah. Here's the post on Truth Social the president put out, writing that the great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he is no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erica, and family. Charlie, we love you. Now, Charlie Kirk was a conservative activist, very active on social media, and a major supporter of Donald Trump. He became one of the young faces of the MAGA movement, and he was one of the founders of Turning Point USA, a major political nonprofit that advocated for conservative causes. Kirk had been on his American comeback tour. He was going to colleges across the country and speaking on campus. And one of those stops today at Utah Valley University. It's in Orem, Utah. It's about 45 minutes south of Salt Lake. And it's a school of about 45,000 kids. And thousands of people were listening to Kirk speak at the time that he was shot. Now, at the time of this reporting, police say a suspect is still on the loose. Originally, there was a campus alert that went out saying that there was a suspect in custody. Then you had videos circulating on social media of an older man being detained. It is unclear what the circumstances were around that, but it is being reported that man is not the shooter who killed Charlie Kirk. A school spokesperson told the New York Times that a single shot was fired at Kirk from a building on campus about 200 yards away from where Kirk was seated. According to the school as well, Kirk was taken by his security team off of campus. Now, there is video circulating on social media of the shooting and of the moment that Charlie Kirk was killed. And we cannot show you that video. It is just too graphic to show it here. It is incredibly disturbing, but in that video, you can see that Kirk is hit. He reacts to being shot, falling out of his chair. You can hear that single gunshot being fired. You also see the bullet hit Kirk in the video, and you see blood leave his body. Then there's just chaos of the thousands of students and people who came to hear him speak running for safety. Now, one of our employees here at Law and Crime has a family member who goes to Utah Valley University, and here are the text messages that they sent to each other in the moments after this shooting. You can see that she says that she's okay. Quote, "I'm hiding right now. I love you." She explained there was a shooting and that she was okay, but she also said that the school was now on lockdown and that she was in hiding with other people. Earlier today, right as this news was breaking, I spoke to retired FBI agent Colin Schmidt. We spoke before the news broke that Kirk was dead. And at the time, it was being reported that a shooter was in custody. And we talked a lot about what this investigation will look like going forward and what charges a shooter, if and when they're arrested, what they could face. Here's our conversation. Joining us now is retired FBI agent Colin Schmidt. Always great to have you on Law and Crime, and thanks for being with us as so much information is developing right now. We know that there are students that are in lockdown right now on this campus. For those who are responding to this now in law enforcement, what are they doing at this point in the response?
Well, from what I understand online, they may have already have a suspect in custody, but one of the big problems when you have a shooting in an outdoor venue is you have self-deployment and lots of law enforcement showing up to the scene and basically having to be organized. So
stand tall with his microphone in hand and dive headfirst into the chaos that always seemed to follow him. For years, this had been his battlefield, colleges, auditoriums, and stages where young people gathered either to support him or to tear him down. Charlie thrived on it. He fed off the energy of both sides. His supporters called him fearless. His critics called him a provocateur. But no one could deny that whenever he stepped onto a stage, the room shifted, the air thickened, and conflict was guaranteed. That night at Utah Valley University began like all the others. Students flooded into the venue. On one side, rows of cheering fans clutched signs. their chants of support echoing through the space. On the other, protesters filled the room with noise, determined to drown him out. Security lined the walls. Reporters set up their cameras. The stage was set for what should have been another predictable spectacle. Charlie Kirk versus the crowd. His words against theirs. The battle of ideology playing out in real time. Charlie entered with the same air of confidence he always carried. He moved to the podium, his posture straight, his expression unflinching. He gripped the microphone tight.
Most likely, the Utah State Police already set up a command post to bring the people to the one spot where they can organize their crime scene investigators, and then they're going to basically span out, start interviewing people, and determine whether he's a lone shooter or there's more people involved in a conspiracy.
And that was going to be my next question is the, and I know law enforcement trains for this, but there's just that chaos of so many people that were in this like college quad. They're running. This one person, it appears, we don't know his identity at this point, is in custody. How do you make sure in all of that chaos that there isn't someone else who is part of this?
Well, you really can't. When you have, it looks to be about 5,000 to 10,000 people running in all different directions. The only thing you do is you got to start at the source, which is the shooter. They have him immediately identified. It looks like he may have made the shot from within the crowd, and the people, probably it's going to come out that people around him took him into custody, so to speak, or held him. But then the next step would be to do a logical investigation in terms of interviewing him, get his cell phone, do some cell phone analytics, and then talk to the people around there, and then frankly to determine if there is somebody that financed him or put him up to this, or if he's just a lone shooter.
So all of this is just for people who are watching this. I mean, this story broke probably for us within the last 10 or 15 minutes, so it's really within the hour. It appears that this has happened. How quickly do you start asking questions of that suspect?
Well, they're going to have to be careful because you don't want to prompt him to lawyer up, so to speak, even though that is his right. You want to get some professionals there, or get him in a car, get him aside, and basically start talking to him immediately to get a confession, so to speak. He's in custody, so it'll be an interrogation, so he has to be read his Miranda rights. And basically, the most important thing for them to find out is was he alone, or is there more people? From the pictures online, if that indeed is the suspect, he looked to be about 65 to 70, white male, older gentleman. So I suspect he's a lone shooter, and this has been something that's brewing within him for a long time, and then they're gonna find all those things out.
Because I also think too, because I saw that same picture, and we're not showing it at this point because we don't know officially if this is the person. And we've seen in some cases, I remember, I think the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl parade shooting, that there was someone who actually wasn't arrested for it. So that picture is going around on social media. And if he is the person, I think for law enforcement, it would be a challenge where here he is on the ground and you have people who you want to almost get away so they aren't. I could understand they would be really angry at this person and would want to go at him, and you want to make sure you have your suspect. Then at the same time, these could be witnesses. How do you handle the chaos of that moment?
Well, the first thing is to ensure there is no chaos. So they're going to radio in lots of support. More uniform officers are going to get in there. They're going to do crowd control, and then they're going to interview the people that most likely put their hands on him or were around him, because they're going to be around, because ultimately it's kind of just common sense. They're going to say, hey, does anybody know what happened? And being that event is very partisan, there's going to be people that are going to be happy to talk, happy to cooperate with law enforcement. And then from there, you just build on that, because most times when people go to events like this, they don't go alone. They go with a couple of friends. And so somebody's going to know somebody who saw something, and then
smiled as the boos clashed with the cheers and began his speech. His voice cut through the chants like a blade. His delivery was sharp, commanding, unwavering. Every time the protesters grew louder, he grew louder too. Every interruption became an opportunity for a comeback. For the first several minutes, it was the typical performance his audiences had come to expect. But beneath the noise, beneath the arguments, there was an undercurrent murmurs drift. Unease echoes through the hall that no one in the room could see. An undercurrent of darkness, of danger, of something that would erupt in a way no one could have predicted. Witnesses later described how fast it all happened. One moment, Charlie was in the middle of a sentence, leaning into the microphone with his usual fire. The next, The air was split apart by a sound that didn't belong in a rally. A sound so sharp, so devastating that it froze the entire room. In an instant, everything changed. Cheers turned to screams. Chants turned into chaos. Security rushed forward. People ducked for cover. And all eyes turned toward the stage where Charlie Kirk, once unshakable, once untouchable, was suddenly struck down. The silence that followed was haunting. For a few seconds, the room was paralyzed, as though no one could comprehend what had just happened. Charlie's body collapsed, his microphone clattering to the floor. His words cut short forever. Protesters dropped their signs. Supporters surged forward in panic. Phones shot into the air recording the horror that had unfolded before their eyes.
There, you're just going to do the investigation.
There's pictures, images, videos circulating on social media of the moment that Charlie Kirk was shot. It appears he was shot in the neck. According to the school, and an alert that it was a single gunshot from the crowd, from a suspect now believed to be in custody. There's probably about 5,000 people, let's say, who were watching this speech. I think it was the Q&A session, for whether it's private security that's there or police that are there. I mean, how do you actually scan a crowd to try and spot someone who might be armed and trying to do something like this?
Well, I mean, you're common sense. You're going to go to the sound and then the muzzle flash or the smoke, and so it most likely it appears that if he is the guy that did it, there was people around him who saw him pull out the long rifle or whatever, because it doesn't look like it was a shot from a handgun, and they frankly detained him, and then from there law enforcement will come in and do their investigation.
And for these political events, I mean, to your point, I mean, Turning Point, it's a very partisan group, conservative politics. This is not a rock concert. This is a political rally that was going on. For law enforcement in the area, what is the preparation like in the days leading up to it? And I know he's on tour right now, so he's been at a lot of different colleges. But even in the days leading up to this speech, or the speech I think he was going to be in Colorado next, what is the preparation like ahead of an event where you know it's going to be very emotionally charged?
Well, something like this, I mean, technically he's not a protectee like the president or somebody else. So it's going to be up to individually each department and how they want to handle it. They're going to get from the Utah or from the school the agenda and to see when he's there, when he's coming in, and then they'll probably do some scanning of social media to see if there's any threats or anything out there. And then Charlie Kirk, he has his own security staff, hopefully, that they're going to be doing some threat assessments to see if there's any stalkers, anybody that's following them around. But the problem with an event like that is law enforcement doesn't have the resources to set up a perimeter and scan people through a metal detector like they would with the Secret Service. So, and even then, obviously, Donald Trump was shot. So these events now, it's looking like we're kind of moving into an era of political assassinations. Actually, we've already moved into that era, and I fear for all of these public figures, especially on the right side of what is coming down the pipe.
Because I think for these events, and it's, to your point, you can't scan every single person coming through in some of these outdoor venues. And like we saw in Butler, Pennsylvania with President Trump, there can be breakdowns in the security. But I also think of, private security teams, the cost of all of that leading up to it. I guess how, and I know that this is a question that we won't be able to solve right here, but at this point where people are very outspoken, it's their right, even if you disagree with their political beliefs, to hold these events and hold them peacefully. How do we do these events, but then at the same time, not have situations like this where someone who is armed and angry can show up and do something?
Indoor events. Yeah, you're going to have to use basketball stadiums, closed stadiums where you have access control, and you don't have to set up extra fencing and all that other stuff. And then all of those.
The man who had built a career on standing tall in the storm now lay motionless in the very chaos he thrived on. The assassination of Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University sent shockwaves that traveled far beyond the walls of that auditorium. Within minutes, the headlines exploded. News anchors scrambled to cover the story. Social media lit up in disbelief. Hashtags trending worldwide as millions tried to process what had happened. Supporters wept openly. Critics who had spent years opposing him sat in stunned silence. For all the arguments, all the debates, all the division, no one had expected this. The dark truth of that night, however, went far deeper than the act itself. This wasn't just the killing of one man. This was the brutal revelation of what America had become. A country so divided, so consumed by hatred and rage, that words were no longer enough. Debate had given way to destruction. Ideology had become a battlefield where lives could be lost. For his supporters, Charlie's assassination turned him into a martyr. They said he had been silenced because he dared to speak truths others feared to say. They claimed his death was proof of just how dangerous the climate had become. Proof that his voice had threatened the very foundations of his enemies. Vigils were held across the country. Candles lit the night as crowds gathered to mourn him. His name.
I was going to tell you about an arrest being made in the murder of Charlie Kirk, but that ended up not happening. A person of interest was taken into custody and questioned, but then released. And this is actually the second false start in the case in just a matter of hours. Charlie Kirk was a conservative activist who woke up this morning and traveled to the campus of Utah Valley University in Orem to speak to college students. It was something that Kirk loved to do. He was the founder of Turning Point USA, and he had done this thousands of times before. Take a look. Kirk then took his seat under a tent and started to speak to the students, taking questions. It was 20 minutes into the event, around 12:20 Mountain Time, when someone in the crowd asked a question about gun violence, and at that very moment, the assassin fired. Kirk was hit in the neck. I'm not going to show the video to you. It's horrific. This 31-year-old husband and father of 2 young children started to bleed out immediately. Students ducked in horror, screaming. Kirk's bodyguards rushed him into an SUV in the hope of saving his life, and he was taken to the hospital, but nothing could be done. A man was detained, and it appeared a suspect was in custody immediately, but then that person was released. Then later, FBI Director Kash Patel tweeted, "The subject for the horrific shooting today that took the life of Charlie Kirk is now in custody. Thank you to the local and state authorities in Utah for your partnership with the FBI. We will provide updates when able." But guess what? Patel's information did not pan out. Patel later tweeted, "The subject in custody has been released after an interrogation by law enforcement. Our investigation continues, and we will continue to release information in interest of transparency." So the search for the shooter continues. Charlie Kirk leaves behind a wife, Erica, and 2 young children. Earlier this year, Erica Kirk posted a video on TikTok thanking Charlie for, quote, "being my love story." To discuss this just horrific turn of events, I would like to bring in Bob McEwen. He is a friend of Charlie Kirk's, and he's also a former congressman from the state of Ohio and a board member at Turning Point USA. Bob, first and foremost, my condolences go out to you and everybody at Turning Point and Charlie Kirk's family. How are you doing upon hearing of this news that he's been assassinated? He was murdered.
That's exactly correct. He really was. He gave his life. He impacted the nation more than anyone his age ever. He's like the president. There's no 2 of them. And it's hard to grasp where we are. He was winsome. He spoke truth. He had nothing to fear. He would just go on a college campus and sit in a chair and just share truth about life, liberty, and the right to pursue happiness, and a firm commitment to his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. He was uncompromising, which then knew that the haters
became a rallying cry for those who promised they would not let his mission die with him. For his critics, the shock was just as sharp. Many of them had spent years clashing with him, mocking him, dismissing him, but death strips away the noise. Suddenly, the man they had opposed was no longer a political opponent, but a life cut short in violence. Even those who had hated his words struggled to comprehend the brutality of his assassination, because in the end, no matter where you stood on Charlie Kirk, no one could justify the sight of a man being struck down in front of a crowd of young people who came to witness a debate, not a death. Investigations began immediately. Questions swirled in every corner. How did it happen? How did someone manage to get a weapon into the venue? Where was the protection that should have kept him safe? Who was behind the act? And what drove them to take such a step? Theories spread like wildfire, some blaming political extremism, others pointing to the toxic climate that had been building for years. But while the investigations dug into details, the larger truths loomed over everything like a shadow. America had crossed a line it could never step back from. Charlie Kirk's assassination became the symbol of that line. For years, he had thrived on the culture wars, positioning himself as the man who would walk straight into the fire and never back down. He had been called fearless, arrogant, relentless. He had clashed with students, professors, politicians, and activists. His rallies had become ground zero for America's division, drawing in both fierce loyalty and unrelenting hatred. And at Utah Valley University, in one single devastating moment, that division exploded into violence. Supporters turned their grief into fury. They accused the climate of hatred and demoness.
Coming after him, he had security, but we hoped that this day would never come. And certainly for Erica and the children, I know how upset and distressed I am just to think how they must feel as a horrible few hours that we've endured.
You said that he had security, which, obviously was a good thing. But I mean, were there ever threats that he had received? Was he concerned about his safety, especially after what happened with President Trump and Butler, during the campaign? I mean, he's sitting out in these open air venues. Had he ever talked to you about being concerned for his safety or receiving threats?
The thing is that truth overcomes error. And error cannot tolerate truth. Error can speak with error, and they can just go on and have white papers and discussions and conferences. But once truth enters the room, they all turn on the truth. They have to only the left burns books, and only the left censors. And so he knew that his life was under threat on a regular basis, just really daily. And we've talked about it. He could never take his children to the grocery store or never walk in the park alone. And Erica signed on to that program, recognizing that preserving the greatest hope in the history of mankind, the United States of America, was a noble calling, and he was willing to make that sacrifice. But as you can see, it was one bullet, a person prepared to take him out, and that assassin, who obviously was a hater, and he had to silence truth, because when Charlie had people talk about these things and they began to logically think, it made a tremendous change. We've always said that young people, you really didn't need to worry about them until after they got married, after they became parents, and after they got a job, that they would all become conservatives eventually. And so just let them talk about socialism and communism and things when they're young. But Charlie didn't believe that. He said, no, let's do it. Let's talk right now. And the shift has taken place that we've never seen, certainly in any of our lifetimes, that the most conservative demographic is 18 to 25. And it's no small responsibility that he did that across the nation and began to stand up after all of the lies that went on about COVID and you need to stand so many feet apart and you can't be there for your parents' funerals and all these things that the young people began to question. Now, what is that? And when they questioned, he was there with truth, and truth was winning, and that's why they had to take him out.
Where were you when you heard that he had been shot?
Well, I was at my desk, and I got a call from his chief of staff and mentioned that he had just been shot, and it was in the neck, and he wasn't sure. They had no more information than that, and it was a good 15 to 20 minutes after that it then broke on the news that he had been fired upon, and then we prayed, hopeful that he would survive, because I repeat, there's no two like him. There's no one to take his place, but nevertheless, so I'm reaching out to the staff. Obviously, lives have been upended. That was the goal. And
goal and U-Haitian of being responsible. They said Charlie had been painted as a villain for too long, and that constant demonization had made his death inevitable. Critics, meanwhile, pointed to his own role in fueling the flames, arguing that his rhetoric had been part of the same dangerous spiral that eventually consumed him. Both sides hurled accusations. Both sides claimed the tragedy as proof of their own warnings. And in the middle of it all, the undeniable fact remained. Charlie Kirk was gone, assassinated on a stage where words were supposed to be his only weapon. The real dark truth of Charlie Kirk's assassination is that it wasn't just about him. It was about all of us. It was about the toxic culture of division that we allowed to grow unchecked. It was about the hatred that built up day after day until it erupted in the worst way possible. It was about the collapse of dialogue, the death of civility, and the rise of violence as the ultimate answer to disagreement. Charlie's death didn't come out of nowhere. It was the final consequence of a society tearing itself apart. Charlie Kirk's life ended on that stage at Utah Valley University, but the impact of his death will echo for years. Supporters will remember him as a warrior who stood his ground until the very end. Critics will remember him as a polarizing figure whose life became a symbol of the dangers of division. But everyone, supporters, critics, and those who stood somewhere in the middle will remember the night the shouting stopped. The night the clash of chants was replaced by horror. The night Charlie Kirk was assassinated before the eyes of a divided nation. That rally was supposed to be just another stop on his endless tour. Instead, it became the final chapter of his life, the moment that revealed the darkest truth of all. In a world this divided, no one is safe. Not even the ones who believe they can stand in the fire forever. Charlie Kirk believed he could. But at Utah Valley University, the fire finally burned too hot and it consumed him in front of the world.